big time important words, these 4 words, they'll get plugged into the formula. Like on delta, the first section is like all midline, and the second section is like all amplitude, but it'll start mixing it up after that, and I'll be reiterating what these words mean as we go through some examples. So it's important to know the difference between a sine graph and a cosine graph. We're doing trig graphs today, and we don't do tangent in math 3, we just do sine and cosine. So notice that this graph is crossing in the middle of this wave. In the middle like that is always a sine graph. So sine graphs cross in the middle. In particular, a positive sine graph is crossing going up. So I'm going to add to that middle, and I'm going to put in parentheses going up. More on that in a second. My next graph, the second picture, is it also crossing in the middle of this wave? I'm talking about from low to high. Is it crossing in the middle, or is it crossing at some other landmark? It's crossing right here at the top of this wave. So when I talk about crossing in, I'm talking about y-axis, starting point. So cosine graphs cross at the top. Where do you think a negative cosine graph will cross at? Since regular cosine crosses at the top, thank you, a negative cosine graph will cross at the bottom. So sometimes you'll see this same second graph flipped, and it'll be crossing down here at the bottom. So again, if a sine graph crossed in the middle, where do you think a negative sine graph will cross at? Well, it's still going to cross in the middle, but a negative sine graph will be going down. So if you ever do have a negative sign, it's going to be going down like this blue line I just added. Still crossing in the middle, but it's flipping. And I'll show you that happening in Desmos. In the next block I give you, basically the format. It looks a little bit more complicated than what it is. It's always sine or cosine for y'all. One of your parts on delta, you're just going to be filling in this number, the F, and the M. You might already recognize what these stand for. A is amplitude from that first block. F is frequency. What's M? Midline. How are you going to remember this? Well, it used to be kind of easy to teach this part. Math 4 wasn't always called Math 4. It used to be called AFM. And that's ironically the pattern that these are going in. It's always the A, the F, and the M. AFM didn't stand for amplitude, frequency, and midline when it was Math 4. It stood for advanced functions and modeling. Now it's just called Math 4 for whatever reason. One of your sections, again, delta, you'll be plugging those numbers in. I'll show you a lot of examples of finding those numbers. So first one, I'm going to answer everything about it, even though, again, delta is just going to keep it simple. They're just going to be like, what's the midline? What's the midline? What's the midline? And then you go to the next section, what's the amplitude? What's the amplitude? So anyways, I need the line going through the middle. So let me start here. Does this line look like it's going through the middle? No, definitely. It's too high, right? It's got to be going right in between the top and the bottom. So my midline is y equals 4. It wants the actual midline, like the equation. By the way, I skipped the very important part. Is this a sine graph or a cosine graph? Is it crossing in the middle, or is it crossing at the top? Crossing in the middle of this graph. Thank you. Middle is sine. I'm going to put in quotations middle. If it was middle going down, if it was flipped and going this way, then it would be negative sine. Amplitude is real simple. You saw this on the warm-up. From the midline to the top, how many blocks is that? From the midline to the top is how many blocks? Just one. Same on the bottom, right? Amplitude is how high or low it goes from the midline. Should be the same on top and bottom. Super important moment. Kids get period and frequency mixed up all the time. I got it mixed up a little bit at first. Best way to teach it, 2 P words. Period is place. The place it first repeats. This is a great moment to talk to me. So I start here in the middle. Make sure you follow me with my cursor. Say now when you think I have first repeated. Oh, it's actually right here. So I heard a lot of nows. I appreciate the participation. So here's why it's here, because I'm in the middle when I start. I got to go through the top part of my cycle, and I got to go through the bottom part of my cycle. And this is the first time I've repeated. Where am I at? I'm at 8 pi. So the place I first repeat, 8 pi. It's not always going to be that easy. Sometimes I'm going to need the little formula that y'all saw in the warm-up, which I think I'm going to need in this next part. Frequency is how many times it repeats before it gets to the end of its cycle, which a general cycle is 0 to 2 pi. Y'all learned on Thursday 2 pi is a huge deal in this unit. It's a whole circle, essentially. Now, 2 pi is right here, which you can tell it's kind of a tricky question because, again, I'm asking you, when I ask you for frequency, I'm basically asking you how many times does it repeat before it gets right here? Has it even repeated yet? Nope. So it's going to be a fraction of some sort. I'm just looking for, again, how many times it repeats between here, where I start, and here. And we see it's not very much. It hasn't even repeated yet. Any kind of tricky situation, you're just going to use period equals 2 pi divided by frequency. This is on the first block at the bottom. When you have a challenging problem on a test, it's going to be because you need this formula. Or when you have a challenging situation, you will need this formula. This formula is not challenging. It might look unique. There's some different stuff. You're just now learning what P and F are. By the way, look, we already know what period is, right? So I'm at 8 pi equals 2 pi divided by F, and this is basically the same situation that you had on the warm-up. We just averaged the 88 on the warm-up, so hopefully you're not scared of this. Cross multiply, there's really just a 1 on the bottom. 1 times 2 pi is 2 pi. 8 pi times F is just 8 pi F. Can't even multiply 8 pi and F, so it's 8 pi F. Don't be scared. The goal of any equation in the world is to just what? Get F by itself, or X, or whatever the variable is. There's only one variable. How do you get rid of 8 pi? Think you on divide. What you do to one side, do it on the other side. Look at everything that cancels. 8's cancel. Pi's cancel. Those pi's cancel. And all I'm left with is F equals 2 over 8. But 2 over 8 is really just what? A fourth. We said it was going to be a fraction, right? Remember what that question was. How many times is it repeating between here and here? It hasn't even repeated yet. We knew it was going to be a little number. It doesn't repeat until it gets here. So how many times did it repeat in there? Just 1/4 of a time. Makes perfect sense. And finally, the equation is, remember, AFM. It's A. I'm going to fill in the numbers, but it's going to be A times sine Fx plus or minus M. I'm taking this from the last block. We already know all these numbers. I just got to write them in. The amplitude is 1. The frequency is 1/4. Yep. Don't forget the X, and the midline was positive 4. At the end of delta, I believe it's going to make you type in the whole equation like that. And when kids miss it, they'll come to me like, why am I missing this? They'll have everything right. Guess what part they'll forget? They'll forget to put the X in there. Like, they'll have all the numbers right. They'll have the sine cos part right. Like, the mistakes I'll get today will be real simple mistakes, which is a good thing. Like, it's easy for me to help people. Easy to learn from simple mistakes. Sine or cosine? It's definitely a version of cos. Is it positive cos though, or is it negative cos? Nice job on negative cos, because it's not crossing at the top, it's crossing at the bottom of its wave. You're always looking at your y-intercept, also called your starting point. And it's It's crossing at the bottom. That's a negative cos. So already knowing the end, I'm going to have negative something cos. What's the midline? I know it might be tough to see from your seat. I think the middle goes right through here. Where am I at? Nice job on -3. Am I putting x equals -3 or y equals -3? Thank you. It goes through the y-axis. Remember what the words mean. Amplitude. How far is it from there to the top or there to the bottom? How many blocks? Or be careful because each block is like a half right now. I think 1 is here, 2, 3, 4. My amplitude is 4. I'm going to go ahead and write that at the bottom as well. Remember at the bottom, I'm going to follow that pattern, AFM. This is a pretty easy period. It's a good period question, but remember, kids will get P and F mixed up. Translate period to another P word for me. Place. Thank you. To place it first does what? To place it first repeats. So we're starting at the bottom. So I'm going all the way to the top and back to the bottom. Bam. There's where I first repeat. Right there. Where am I at? I'm at pi. Place, I first repeat. It's pi. P does not go in your formula. Remember, your formula is AFM. This frequency is actually pretty easy. We won't need the formula. Frequency is how many times it does what? Repeats. But it's going to repeat to infinity. It's how many times it repeats between 0 and what? Nice job. Between 0 and 2 pi. Remember, 2 pi is a huge deal in this unit. It's a whole circle, or in this case, a whole cycle. How many times did it repeat between there? Nice job on 2. 2 times it repeats. It went all the way to the top and back down once right there, and then to the top and back down right there. So you didn't need the little formula this time. That's good news. Last but not least, the equation. Always the A, the F, and the M. -4 cos. The F is 2, and the midline is -3. Mr. Curse forgot to put what? Nice job. Mr. Curse forgot to put the X, as I was saying. Most of the time, kids will come see me with their delta, like, why did I miss this? I know I got this stuff right. Yeah, you just forgot the X. You ain't going to get no function without an X. But when you go over to decimals, generally your graph is not in terms of pi, right? It's in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. What you are going to want to do a lot of times in this unit is go to that wrench button up there in the top corner that I'm always going to, and just on your x-axis, change the step to pi. What step means, like if I put the step as 5, it would count like 5, 10, 15, 20. Now it's going to count in terms of pi. See, it goes from pi to 2 pi, etc. So just kind of playing around with it for a second. I'm going to put one that's sine. I'm going to put a amplitude of 2 to make it a little taller. I'm going to put a frequency of just 1x. So a pretty simple one here. What is the first time, or matter of fact, how many times is it repeating between 0 and 2 pi right now? Just one repeat, right? And that's because I got 1 for my frequency. I want to make it repeat a lot of times. I'm going to put like a 5. Up, now it's repeating 5 times between 0 and 2 pi. If I want my midline to be up a little higher, I put something like a +6, and now it's up higher. And again, 2 is the amplitude, so the blocks, it only goes up 2 right now because that little 2 in the front. So go to that wrench, put your x-axis step at pi, and then you can see all your little things happening on decimals for those of you that love to use decimals. So my last one, with just a few seconds left on my video anyways, is it sine or cos? It's crossing at the top, so it's cos. My midline, I believe, is y equals -2. From there it goes up and down 3 blocks. How many times is it repeating between 0 and 2 pi? So the place it first repeated, it was 5 pi over 2. I can't tell the frequency how many times it's repeating before it gets to 2 pi because there ain't no 2 pi. Use the formula. I plugged in my period. I got to cross multiply. That's going to be 4 pi and 5 pi f. I'm going to divide by 5 pi. Looks like it's going to be 4 over 5.